Hey loves, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is a real history lesson, the kind they don't really teach anymore. And honestly, the kind a lot of people don't even realize ever existed. We're talking about home economics. What it was, why it mattered, and how it quietly shaped generations of women long before TikTok tutorials, self-help books, or lifestyle content. For a lot of young women today, this world is completely foreign. Many people have never heard of home economics, never stepped foot in a classroom like it, and never realized that there was once an entire part of the education system designed to prepare girls for adulthood, not just academically, but practically, emotionally, and socially. So today, I want to walk you through what home economics really was, what girls learned, what it felt like to be in those classrooms, and why so many of these skills are being rediscovered now even though they were once dismissed. Let's get into it. First, what was home economics really like? All right, let's really set the scene here, because to understand home economics, you have to understand the world it existed in. Picture the 1940s and 1950s. Post-war life, neighborhoods built around families, clear social expectations, and a future that felt very structured. For young girls, adulthood wasn't some vague idea, it was clearly defined. Marriage, family, responsibility, and contribution to the household were treated as serious roles, not something you just figured out later. And home economics existed because society believed that if girls were expected to carry that responsibility, then they deserved to be trained for it. Home economics was a formal subject inside public schools, with real weight behind it. This wasn't an afterthought or a filler class. It had textbooks, exams, instructors trained specifically in domestic science, and classrooms designed for hands-on learning. The goal wasn't to romanticize housework, it was to make sure young women entered adulthood competent, confident, and capable. Especially for girls whose mothers were busy, absent, or simply overwhelmed, school became the place where life was explained. Home economics didn't just teach tasks, it taught structure, order, and expectation. It answered the unspoken question: what does it actually mean to grow up and take care of yourself and others? Next is what it felt like to walk into a home. Economics classroom. Walking into a home economics classroom felt completely different from walking into any other room in the school. The first thing you noticed was that it didn't feel academic at all. It felt domestic, familiar, almost like stepping into someone's home rather than a classroom. Instead of rows of desks facing a chalkboard, there were kitchen stations, work tables, cabinets, and shelves filled with tools you'd actually use in daily life. You could smell whatever was being cooked that day. You could hear the hum of sewing machines or the clink of dishes being set down. Everything about the space signaled that this was a place where you were expected to do, not just listen. The way the class operated reinforced that feeling. You weren't sitting quietly taking notes for most of the period you were standing, moving, measuring, preparing, cleaning, and correcting mistakes in real time. Teachers circulated the room like supervisors in a working household, watching how you handled tasks, how you followed instructions, and how you worked with others. There was an emphasis on order and routine. Aprons on, hands washed, stations set up properly, tools returned to their place. If something went wrong, you didn't just get a grade, you learned how to fix it. The classroom functioned like a rehearsal space for adulthood, where errors were expected but responsibility was non-negotiable. For many girls, this environment made adulthood feel less intimidating and more manageable. Instead of imagining future responsibilities in the abstract, they were practicing them in a controlled, supportive setting. Cooking a meal, sewing a garment, or cleaning a workspace from start to finish gave a sense of completion that other classes didn't always offer. You could see the results of your work by the end of the period. That sense of capability of knowing you could handle practical tasks on your own stayed with a lot of students long after they left school. It wasn't just a class. It was one of the few places where growing up felt tangible, achievable, and real. Now let's get into the creative space just for girls. And what boys learned too, home economics classes were often girls only, and that created a focused environment where femininity wasn't mocked or minimized. Girls learned together, asked questions freely, and developed skills that were socially valued at the time. These classrooms allowed girls to take traditionally feminine skills seriously, without having to justify their interests or feel embarrassed for caring about domestic knowledge. In a school system that often prioritized academic or technical achievement, home economics gave girls a space where their future responsibilities were treated as worthy of instruction and respect. At the same time, boys weren't excluded from preparation for adulthood, they were simply taught differently. Boys typically took courses like woodworking, mechanics, metalwork, and technical skills. These classes prepared them for providing, building, repairing, and supporting households in more visible, outward-facing ways. They learned how to use tools, fix problems, and work with materials, reinforcing the idea that masculinity was tied to production and physical skill. Just like the girls, boys were being trained for adult responsibility just along different paths, shaped by social expectations. What's important to understand is that this separation wasn't originally framed as unequal, it was framed as complementary. Society believed households functioned best when different roles were clearly defined and well prepared. While we can critique the limitations of that system today, it's also clear that both boys and girls were being intentionally equipped with practical skills for adulthood, rather than being left to figure everything out on their own. In many ways, these classes acknowledge that growing up requires guidance, practice, and education, something modern systems often overlook. Now let's get into the lessons. First is cooking and meal. Preparation. More than just food, cooking classes were structured to mirror real household demands, not personal experimentation. Girls learned how to plan meals for entire families, not just themselves. They were taught nutrition in a very practical way, what keeps people full, healthy, and functioning. Lessons focused on timing, organization, and efficiency. Everything needed to be ready at the same time. Everything needed to be cleaned afterward. Mistakes weren't just about taste, they were about learning responsibility. This wasn't framed as creativity first, it was framed as reliability. The message was clear. People depend on you to feed them consistently. That required planning, discipline, and patience. Girls learned how to stretch ingredients, avoid waste, and work within limits. Cooking became a skill tied to care and competence. And for many girls, this was the first time they felt genuinely capable in a way that mattered outside the classroom. You weren't just passing a subject, you were proving you could handle something real. Next is sewing, knitting, and clothing care. Practical creativity. Sewing and knitting lessons offered a rare combination of creativity, discipline, and practical skill that many other subjects didn't provide. Girls weren't just given fabric or yarn and told to make something pretty. Every project was structured, step by step, and required focus from start to finish. They learned to read and interpret patterns, take precise measurements, and follow complex instructions, all while developing patience and problem-solving skills. Knitting taught repetition, rhythm, and attention to detail, while sewing demanded accuracy and persistence, especially when correcting mistakes or finishing garments. Every stitch, seam, and hem was a lesson in planning, precision, and care, reinforcing that creating something functional and lasting took effort, thought, and dedication. These classrooms weren't just spaces to practice domestic tasks. They were creative laboratories where girls learned to merge skill with imagination and see tangible results from their work. But beyond technical expertise, these lessons were about independence and understanding the world of clothing on a deeper level. Girls learned how to care for, repair, and alter garments, giving them practical tools to manage both their own wardrobes and those of their families. Clothing became more than decoration. It was functional, personal, and even financial knowledge. Girls could choose fabrics, colors, patterns, and styles, experimenting within the structure of a project, which allowed them to express individuality while mastering responsibility. These skills also encourage long-term planning, resourcefulness, and efficiency, teaching girls that managing clothing and textiles was about both aesthetics and life management. In many ways, this blend of creativity, craftsmanship, and practicality gave girls confidence in their ability to handle adult responsibilities. A confidence that, even today, remains a quietly powerful legacy of home economics education. Now, let's get into the budgeting and household management. One of the most important and least talked about parts of home economics was money management. Girls were taught how to plan budgets, prioritize spending, and make decisions based on limited resources. They learned how small choices added up and how financial missteps affected the entire household. This wasn't framed as business or economics, but it absolutely was financial education. These lessons taught accountability. You couldn't spend emotionally. You had to plan ahead. You had to think about needs before wants. And for many women, this training created confidence around money, something many people today struggle to learn well into adulthood. Home economics treated financial responsibility as part of daily life, not a separate, intimidating subject. Beyond just tracking dollars and cents, these lessons emphasized long-term planning and foresight. Girls learned to anticipate household needs, calculate costs for meals, clothing, and maintenance, and adjust when unexpected expenses arose. They practiced making realistic trade-offs, balancing wants and necessities, and finding creative solutions when resources were limited. By learning to see the household as a system where every decision had ripple effects, students developed critical thinking and problem-solving skills that went far beyond the classroom. This kind of financial literacy wasn't abstract theory. It was lived experience, teaching girls how to run a home efficiently, make informed choices, and feel capable in situations where money and responsibility intersected. In many ways, it laid a foundation for independence, confidence, and lifelong skills that remain invaluable even in today's world. Next is etiquette: dining, manners, posture, and being a great hostess. Home economics classrooms often went beyond teaching domestic skills. They were spaces where girls learned to present themselves with confidence, grace, and poise. Lessons on manners emphasized respectful communication, polite behavior, and consideration for others in both casual and formal settings. Students practiced introductions, conversation skills, and responding thoughtfully, learning that small gestures and words could carry significant weight in relationships and social situations. The focus wasn't on perfection or rigid rules. It was about cultivating awareness, self-respect, and ease in interacting with the world around them. Posture and body language were taught alongside manners, helping girls carry themselves with intention in every movement. They learned to sit, stand, and walk in ways that expressed confidence, composure, and elegance. Proper posture wasn't just about appearance. It promoted health, self-discipline, and self-assurance. Even everyday tasks like carrying a tray of food or welcoming a guest became opportunities to practice control, mindfulness, and refined presentation. By combining physical awareness with etiquette, students developed a sense of dignity and self-confidence that extended far beyond the classroom. Being a capable hostess required not only technique, but also emotional intelligence and awareness. Girls were taught to create a warm, welcoming environment for family meals, tea parties, or formal gatherings, coordinating food, conversation, and presentation while maintaining composure. These lessons reinforced planning, responsibility, and organization while cultivating confidence, social awareness, and thoughtful self-expression. Etiquette education wasn't superficial. It trained girls to be capable, poised, and confident in both private and public life, rounding out the practical and creative skills they developed across home economics classrooms. Now let's get into childcare, health, and basic nursing. Home economics classrooms often included lessons on childcare, preparing young women to understand the needs of infants and children and the responsibilities of raising a family. Girls learned about proper feeding, hygiene, and safety practices, along with how to observe and respond to a child's behavior and developmental needs. These classes emphasized the importance of patience, attentiveness, and organization, showing that caring for children required both skill and thoughtfulness. Lessons were practical and hands-on, often including demonstrations, role-playing, and sometimes working with younger children, giving students the confidence to handle real-life situations when the time came. Health and wellness were central components of these lessons. Girls were taught basic nutrition, the importance of personal hygiene, and how to prevent common illnesses. They learned about the human body, healthy routines, and the connection between daily habits and overall well-being. This education extended beyond themselves, equipping them with knowledge to manage the health of an entire household. Understanding these basics fostered a sense of responsibility. allowing students to approach care with knowledge and confidence, rather than uncertainty or fear. Basic nursing skills rounded out this portion of home economics, teaching practical techniques for tending to minor injuries, recognizing symptoms of illness, and providing first aid in emergencies. Girls learned how to bandage wounds, prepare simple remedies, and assist with recovery, building competence and calmness under pressure. This training went beyond mere technical skills. It nurtured empathy, observation, and problem solving, qualities essential for supporting a household and caring for family members. Together, childcare, health, and basic nursing lessons gave students a foundation of practical knowledge and emotional intelligence, preparing them to handle the physical and social responsibilities of adulthood with confidence. Next is housekeeping and organization. Housekeeping lessons were a core part of home economics, teaching girls how to maintain a clean, orderly, and functional home. Students learned techniques for sweeping, dusting, washing, and polishing, but the focus went beyond mere chores. They were taught to approach tasks with strategy and efficiency, understanding that a well-maintained home required planning, consistency, and attention to detail. Girls practiced managing multiple responsibilities at once, keeping spaces tidy while preparing meals, caring for clothing, or planning family routines, developing skills that made household management feel achievable rather than overwhelming. Organization was treated as an essential life skill, not just a matter of aesthetics. Girls learned how to plan household schedules, manage storage, and maintain inventories of supplies, from cleaning products to kitchen staples. They were encouraged to anticipate needs, rotate tasks, and create systems that made daily life run smoothly. This type of structured thinking translated into problem-solving and time management skills that extended far beyond the home. Learning to keep a household orderly gave students a sense of control and accomplishment, showing that diligence and foresight could turn a complex, demanding environment into a functional and harmonious one. Beyond the practical, housekeeping and organization lessons also reinforced responsibility, independence, and care for others. Maintaining a home wasn't only about personal comfort, it was about creating a safe, welcoming, and healthy environment for family members and guests alike. Girls were taught that attention to detail, consistency, and thoughtfulness in household management reflected care, discipline, and respect. By the end of these lessons, students weren't just capable of cleaning or organizing, they had a holistic understanding of how a home functioned as a system, how each task contributed to family well-being, and how their own competence and planning could positively impact the lives of those around them. Next is the other courses that were also taught. Some home economics programs also included lessons in gardening and home food production, teaching girls how to grow vegetables, herbs, and sometimes even small fruit plants to supplement meals and understand where food comes from. These classes combined practical knowledge with planning and responsibility, showing students how to care for living things while contributing to household resources. Later, especially in the 1960s and 70s, home appliances and practical technology became part of the curriculum. Girls learned to use kitchen appliances safely, like ovens, mixers, irons, and washing machines, mastering the skills needed to run a modern household efficiently. These lessons weren't just about tools. They were about confidence, independence, and understanding how to manage a home in a practical, hands-on way. Next is fast forward to the 2020s. And look around. For today's generation, home economics can feel almost completely foreign. Many young women and girls have never even heard of these classes, let alone experience structured lessons in sewing, cooking, budgeting, or etiquette. Yet, when we scroll through TikTok or Instagram, it's impossible to ignore how much attention is devoted to these exact skills. People sharing recipes, knitting tutorials, cleaning hacks, hosting dinners for friends, planting, home finds appliances on Amazon, and budgeting tips. What's striking is that these hobbies are more than just trends. They're proof that these skills remain deeply relevant, practical, and empowering. Home economics, in its original form, would have provided a structured, hands-on space for learning, experimenting, and mastering these abilities long before social media made them accessible online. What's even more surprising is that this resurgence reflects a renewed appreciation for the role of the homemaker. Being able to run a household, care for oneself and others, manage finances, and create a comfortable, well organized environment is being recognized as a valuable, skilled, and creative role, not something to dismiss or overlook. Because at the end of the day, these are essentially life skills that equip women to lead, manage, and thrive in the future. By rediscovering and practicing these abilities, young women today are reconnecting with a legacy of competence, independence, and creativity that home economics once cultivated, showing that the foundations of womanhood and practical expertise are timeless. Now, on to why these skills still matter. Here's the part that truly deserves attention. The skills taught in home economics, from feeding yourself well, caring for your belongings, managing money, maintaining a space, to creating with your hands, are far from outdated. They are practical tools for independence, confidence, and self-sufficiency, skills that empower women to take control of their lives and environments. Learning them reduces stress, builds resilience, and provides a framework for solving everyday problems with competence and creativity. Beyond practicality, these skills are also a form of self-expression, allowing women to shape their homes, routines, and personal style in ways that are uniquely their own. Far from limiting women, mastering these abilities expands possibilities, giving young women the tools to thrive personally, professionally, and socially, while cultivating a quiet strength that can support them through every stage of life. Home economics wasn't perfect. It was shaped by its time, but it treated daily life as something worth teaching. And maybe that's what we lost being in this digital era, because knowing how to care for yourself, your space, and your future isn't limiting, it's grounding. And that knowledge deserves respect. Let me know in the comments if this surprised you, or if you hoped you'd been taught some of these things earlier in life. And as always, thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one.